Hello everyone, and welcome to our special webinar presentation on building 21st century nonprofit business partnerships. This webinar is co-presented by the Foundation Center and Baruch College, the School of Public Affairs, and the Center for Nonprofit Strategy and Management. My name is Caroline Herbert. I'm with the Foundation Center, and I'm acting as your moderator for this session. So if you're not familiar with the Foundation Center, we're a international nonprofit organization. We've been around since 1956, and our mission is to strengthen the social sector by advancing knowledge about philanthropy. And certainly corporate philanthropy is a big part of what we're looking at. So this topic today is very relevant for our mission and our work. And we're pleased to partner with Baruch and their Center for Nonprofit Strategy and Management to present this program. And their website is right there if you're not familiar with them. And we have as our presenter Michael Seltzer, who is currently a distinguished lecturer at Baruch College through the Center for Nonprofit Strategy and Management. I'll tell you a little bit about Michael before I turn it over to him for the presentation, and then I have also have a couple housekeeping notes. But first, let me tell you about our presenter for the session today. Michael Seltzer is a leading authority on charitable giving worldwide, and in the course of a career that spans 40 years, he's worked at 5 foundations, and most recently, he served as the president of the New York Regional Association of Grantmakers. Previously, he worked as a program officer at the Ford Foundation, where he was responsible for the foundation's work in promoting organized philanthropy in the U.S., Africa, Asia, and Latin America. He's also the author of Securing Your Organization's Future, a complete guide to fundraising strategies, which is published by the Foundation Center. And as we said, he's currently a distinguished lecturer at Baruch. And I did want to, before I turn it over to Michael, I do have a couple housekeeping notes. If you haven't already figured out the setup here, pretty much everything you need is right on the screen in front of you. You have up in the top left corner a box that says handouts to download. There are 2 documents available there. One is a resource list that's really for more information on the topic. Then there's also the slide printout for you to download. Right below that is your Q&A box where I've already typed in some announcements, but that is your method of communicating with us if you have comments or questions as we go along. And we will be taking your questions at the end. We've allotted the last 15 minutes or so before the top of the hour to take your questions. So please type them in at any time, and we will go through the queue with a moderated question and answer session at the end. And speaking of questions, I actually have a question for all of you before we start. Does your organization already receive support from corporations? Excuse me. Just wanted to get some sense of where you all stood in terms of your current experience, if any, working with corporations, and I see most of you get at least some. I see about just under 45-50% getting at least a small portion of your budget from corporate support, close to 20%, 15-20% of you getting a substantial amount, and about another third getting none at all. So kind of all over the place, but it looks like the majority at least getting some support already from corporations. And those of you for whom corporate support already makes up a substantial part of your budget, I assume you're tuning in today because you want to learn more about how you can be more effective to build partnerships. So I'm going to switch over to our main presentation and unmute Michael so he can go ahead and take over. And Michael, I know you need to restart, there you go, the webcam. All right, hello. And I'm going to mute myself so you can take over.
Good morning, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you all today, wherever you are in the United States and beyond. It's a great turnout, and on behalf of the Baruch College School of Public Affairs and Center for Nonprofit Strategy and Management and the Foundation Center, and my colleague Asha Challenger, who's here, helped on this PowerPoint, we welcome you. Our topic is an important one. It's timely, it's topical. As you'll soon learn, what I call win-win relationships or partnerships between businesses and nonprofits date back to at least the 18th century in the United States. Today, we often hear the term corporate citizenship. It's supplanted in many circles the term we had been using, corporate social responsibility. And I'm here to tell you that this is now a built-in, embedded principle in the leading businesses in this country and in many other countries in the world as well. From the smallest to the largest of the nation's 26 million businesses, we're witnessing dramatic increases in the numbers of partnerships that produce concrete benefits to local, national, and international nonprofits. We're also seeing a shift from what I call relationships based on transactions to long-term partnerships, which of course have their obvious benefits for us. So what we're which one here? We're having a technical problem, see, with moving the slides. Here we go. Objectives. So our objectives for the day are simple. One is to talk about how you can position your organization to engage your businesses successfully, to understand a concept that I introduced when I was one of the folks that introduced this as a one-day full course for the Foundation Center a number of years ago, the supermarket of corporate resources. We're going shopping, and our marketplace are in fact the aisles of corporate America, small and large. And three is to talk about the insights that you can gain to how you can build what I call win-win lasting partnerships with businesses. Here we go. Let's go back to the 19th century to one of the earliest partnerships that was able to uncover. How many of you know the origin of the turn of the railroad YMCA? Starting in 1872, as America moved westward in the late 1800s, railroad companies needed to move large numbers of railroad workers across the country to lay tracks. You might be able to figure out quickly that a lot of the stories about the Wild Wild West were true. And the owners of the railroad companies were concerned about providing safe lodging that would enable their employees to be removed from some of the, shall we say, unsavory elements of the frontier. Around the same time, in 1851, the YMCA movement moved from Britain, where it started, and its leadership were eager to expand its geographic reach. The match between the emerging YMCA movement and the railroad companies was a perfect partnership. The companies needed, quote unquote, to provide wholesome, catch that word, overnight lodging and meeting space for railroad workers, and the Ys needed buildings so they could expand across the country. So starting in 1872, the companies donated land and helped in the construction of new Ys. The initial YMCA secretaries, their equivalent of executive directors, were even put on the payroll of the railroad companies. In a relatively short period of time, 267 YMCAs, like the first one you see here on the slide, which was the first one that was constructed in Cleveland, Ohio, were built at the division points of the railroad. Even today, in my home, New York City, the two oldest Ys are located near the train stations of the city. So let's move to our second example of a partnership. Again, and Cleveland plays a lot of significance in the history of corporate social responsibility as well as in the history of modern organized philanthropy. because in 1913, business and civic leaders created the first modern federated fund of what we would soon know as the United Way. Now, why was this a partnership that in fact worked both for the community justice movement, as it was called then, and for businesses? Well, before that point, local organizations, like many of you on the phone today, would approach businesses and ask for entrance into the workplace during valuable work time to be able to pitch the employees of those companies for charitable contributions. Business leaders, as well as some union leaders, were concerned that this was reducing the productivity of their employees and supported an early movement which would enable a singular solicitation from the community to the corporate workplace. And the fact of the matter was that the nonprofits were very excited about this as well, because they saw a federated campaign where funds would be raised at a citywide basis across all the company factories and locations, and then allocated it to different organizations, would enable them to raise larger sums than if recipient organizations sought to undertake their own separate campaigns. As a key to the, if you will, the soundness of the approach, the United Way's continue to this day in over 2,000 communities in the same federated fundraising drive, and of course it's gone through many changes. Well, if we move to the modern period, let's go to my favorite lady in the harbor, the Statue of Liberty. So jumping ahead to 1983, as part of its 25th anniversary celebration, American Express, whose headquarters look out at the Lady in the Harbor, decided to undertake a campaign to raise funds toward the restoration of the statue. For a 3-month period, American Express donated 1 penny for each time its American Express card was used, and $1 for every new customer application during that period. From these pennies and dollars, would you believe in that 3-month period, $17 million was raised for the restoration of the statue? But of equal import, particularly to American Express, card usage increased by, can you imagine, 28%, and new membership applications jumped by 45%. Many deem this campaign as the birth of what is now called cause-related marketing, to denote efforts where companies use their marketing and advertising budgets rather than their charitable budgets to support good works in the community. Now, 3 years later, many of you will remember an incredible special event called Hands Across America. And some of you may rightfully say, well, it was easy for corporate America to embrace the Statue of Liberty as a cause. It was not controversial in any way, and it certainly would appeal to the millions, including my grandparents, who came over through Ellis Island and saw the Statue of Liberty when they arrived in this country in 1901. But 1983 was a different climate. And the cause, 1986, excuse me, and the cause was no longer something as popular as restoring the statue. It was basically to fight hunger and homelessness. President Ronald Reagan was the president at the time. He had difficulty acknowledging that hunger and homelessness were ongoing problems in America. And here we see Coca-Cola, the world's most well-known brand, coming forward to embrace with its sponsorship dollars the cause of fighting hunger and poverty. So on May 25th, 1986, and yes, I was there, and I'm sure a number of you were there, over 5 million of us linked hands for 15 minutes to make a 4,125-mile human chain that stretched from, can you imagine, from New York City to Long Beach, California. And Coca-Cola provided $8 million in sponsorship support to that effort. At the same time, we're seeing a greater understanding and sophistication of how to do cause-related marketing campaigns. 80% of junior high schools in the United States receive social studies kits on hunger and homelessness. succeeding, and both with the kits and with all the publicity that ensued by Hands Across America, with the boost of some of celebrities, of course, hunger and homelessness became a front-page issue in this country. However, it was not around without controversy. This time, the controversy wasn't necessarily about, if you will, of the cause. It was an old controversy that plagues many nonprofits, which was, where was the money going? And the press, because the event attracted so much visibility, the event the costs were carefully examined, and the total costs were $34 million, and only $17 million were left to pay, for grant making to local anti-poverty programs. So it netted approximately about 15 to 16 million. So what we see now is with both the emergence of cause-related marketing, but also see in terms as events sponsored by companies get larger visibility, they also in fact are more liable to public scrutiny of how the money is used and what the outcome of it will be. All right, so let us now move to our next slide, which is the way corporations give. And this is where we're introducing the marketplace idea. What I've created is basically a supermarket aisle with 6 aisles, and we're going to briefly go through each of those aisles. The first aisle is the most well-worn, the one we're most accustomed to going to regularly, and that's we want cash. We want cash on the barrel. Now, the cash, if the company has a foundation, it files a 990 tax return. If it doesn't have a foundation, then we have to do additional research through some of the tools you'll learn about shortly. There are also employee matching gifts, and there are also payroll deductions. Now, what's happening on that front currently? What we saw in the last year that, in fact, we've had data on is that in 2012, giving by corporations did increase by 12.2%. Now, if you look at compared to other sectors of the charitable giving pie, actually, that's pretty substantial, increased 3 times according to Giving USA. But let's look a little bit more closely. Okay, so median giving, according to the Chronicle Philanthropy last July, increased for the first time since the recession to $225 million, about a sample of 100 companies. But here we have an interesting development. Donations of products, which are aisle 2, are growing more faster than gifts of cash. We see, so if we look at in-kind support, we're seeing Google, in fact, is generating a whole new set of programs. And if you're not familiar with Google's for Nonprofits, let me urge you to, in fact, become familiar with it, because Google is now supporting nonprofits by allowing them easier access to leading technology and creating a space for collaboration to minimize duplication of resources. Google Ad Grants offers nonprofits in-kind advertising through Google AdWords, Google's online advertising tool. Nonprofits can now receive up to $10,000 per month in AdWords advertising to promote their initiatives via text ads. It also provides Google Wallet and Google Docs that can help organizations. And you'll see in the PowerPoint there's a link to this. So I will, but if you just Google nonprofits, you'll get a sense of it. So in-kind support is now exceeding by many companies what they're providing in actual product support. What's aisle 3? Oh, before I go to aisle 3, smallest nonprofits, just if they are interested in increasing the use of their raising their corporate profile, can go to banks and ask them, can they use their boardrooms for meetings of their board? Are there facilities where they can go to department stores and have displays in their windows, particularly around the holidays, donating products that the companies produce. Now, in some cases, you say, well, we're still looking for the cash, but we're very much interested in this webinar of saying, let's get our foot in the door in the easiest way. And aisle 2 is a lot less competitive than the cash aisle, and it's an aisle you can jump to from cash support, and a good way to begin a relationship. What's going on in aisle 3? People power. This is a great treasure trove of resources available from businesses. It's tapping into the corporations for new board members, for volunteers, particularly for specialized expertise. Now in the metropolitan areas of Chicago, LA, New York City, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C., we now have an organization called the Taproot Foundation that makes grants of professional consulting services. And in these instances, grants are delivered. You have to apply for them on a pro bono basis by 5 to 6 business professional teams in a whole variety of areas. People power, again, also is an aisle that is underutilized and is a good way of getting your foot in the door, particularly if you're looking for corporate volunteers. And you'd be tapping on the HR door, not the community relations or charitable door. Aisle 4 is in New York, we just saw 2 weeks ago, is an aisle that has really grown, and that's sponsorship. It's fun to remind ourselves that when the first New York City Marathon was held in 1970, organized by a small little organization called the New York Road Runners Club, there were only 127 participants. Today, the marathon attracts thousands of runners and secures $2 to $3 million annually in sponsorship for 31 businesses. Now, why would businesses, particularly in the case of ING, which picked up the dominant sponsorship, get involved with something? Why would they be interested in runners? Well, let me give you a quote from Ad Age. Given the great exposure such a sponsorship offers, the benefit will greatly outweigh the costs. The opportunity to interact with the prized consumer group. Article notes that marathon finishers are sought after demographic. They're highly educated, high earners, and in most cases they travel and spend in hospitality. So when we as nonprofits, in fact, approach businesses, they're not only interested in our mission, they're interested in what kinds of demographics do our donors represent, that they can help tap into the good feeling that their customers also match our donors. Consumers philanthropy is an area that I give a lot of credit to Paul Newman with Newman's Own, but the fact of the matter goes back to the Trappist monks in medieval times, when in fact we're selling jam, and now still to this day we see Trappist jams on our supermarket shelves selling. We're going to see a more pronounced example of that coming up this season through Tom's Marketplace. Now let me show you one of my favorite examples. This is an elephant made by Kenyan women by discarded flip-flops on the shores of the Indian Ocean that are now sold in a department at ABC about 5 minutes from Baruch College, where the bulk of the proceeds go to support the NGO that in fact is helping these women develop a source of livelihood and also protecting the marine environment from flip-flops, which do not, in fact, what's the word I'm looking for, disappear easily, but continue to clog the oceans of our world, particularly the Indian Ocean. This is a combination of earned income where nonprofits used to produce products, but what we're now seeing now is more companies that, in fact, are marketing local enterprises. Okay. So our last aisle, which is the most underutilized, is where nonprofits seek out businesses to join us as advocates on issues. So currently we're seeing Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and other leading companies, in fact, take a prominent role in fighting for immigration reform in Washington, D.C. All right, so how do we tap into the supermarket of aisles? What I have here is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-step process that I'm going to walk you through as to how you can partake of the supermarket of corporate resources. First one is doing prospecting. As I said, we have 26 million businesses in the U.S. I invite you to come down to a prospect list of 5 sectors of American business, and 2 companies within each sector are what I consider low-hanging fruit. You have a variety of resources that are on your sheet with links, including the North American Industry Classification System, Corporate Giving Online, which is an online database of the Foundation Center, and the fact of the matter is that you can access it free through any of the Foundation Center locations or through a subscription service to access it through your office. And here are 3 more resources that you can use to research companies. Another is simply to look around who is in your neighborhood, survey your own donors, constituents, and find out where in fact they're shopping, and develop a profile of those companies that would be interested in looking at an opportunity that you might present. How do you position your nonprofit? Well, heartstrings plays a value, but at the end of the day, businesses want to know some hard facts, including what is your reputation, to what extent is the media familiar with you, how knowledgeable are you in the subject area? Are they partnering with an organization that really can demonstrate a track record of accomplishment in the mission space that you're in? What is your vision? What are your mission? What are your values? Are these values that they can resonate with as a company? Who are your leadership? Most importantly, who is your constituency? Not only the current constituency, but the prospective constituency that they can help you reach out to. Where are you located? Are you located where a company sells its products, where its headquarters are located, where it has local salespeople? Those are important things. And finally, companies pay a lot to have celebrity endorsements. We get ours free. Are there any celebrities that we have access to or that we can possibly activate that would support a campaign? Internally, if you've not done this already, I encourage those of you who already are in securing corporate support to do this, is to make sure that you develop a strategy and that your board signs off on it. You might approach a school like Baruch and see if you can get a team of students from a social entrepreneurship class to work with you on a corporate resource mobilization strategy. Find a kindred professor. Second, be sure to develop a corporate gift acceptance policy. We're going to touch upon this a little bit later as to why this is important. But I've included here a sample of what in fact one looks like. But there are many organizations, American Heart Association, a whole range of them that have, if you do a search under corporate gift acceptance policies, you'll see many samples come up. 4, of the aisles that we've covered, pick a low-hanging fruit aisle to get, particularly for those who are starting out, where you can get your foot in the corporate water and succeed and encounter a yes. I would say the two most likely aisles to start with are aisle 2 and aisle 3. You may, in fact, of course you want aisle 1, but let's begin to build a relationship where there are less competition from other nonprofits, and then, but also to be able to identify internal ambassadors. If you get volunteers, if you go with a volunteer program, and in fact begin to identify people within the company who can then serve as internal navigators for your nonprofit as who's behind these different doors, because each of these 6 doors that I present here have different door openers. The cash and carry is the foundation, the community relations office, depending on the size of the company. If it's small, it may be the manager, it may be the head of the, you may approach a supermarket chain through the manager at the local store, and so forth. But as we grow up higher in the ladder, in-kind support, we may be looking for, we'll be knocking at different doors. People power, going through the human resources door. Sponsorship, and consumer philanthropy, we're often going through the marketing agency, advertising agency, or the VP of marketing. Consumer philanthropy, we might be approaching the local department store to see if they will sell a product. My local Barnes & Noble often, every Christmas, was selling the calendar of the local elementary school PTA right there next to the cash register. Now, we use large examples, but I can assure you that there are small nonprofits active in all the 6 spaces. Aisle 6, civic leadership, is really working, finding, who are their lobbyists, who are in charge of government relations, that we can seek out a campaign which is a win-win for both our interests as well as the corporate interests, and they can, without much show of effort, really make a big effort. Develop materials. The good thing about those of you who may be more accustomed to applying for grants to foundations or applying to foundations, corporations are not looking for tomes of literature. They're looking for a basic fact sheet, which hopefully includes infographics, presenting your organization better on one page with graphics. You're going to need to develop a letter of inquiry. You certainly want to develop talking points from once you secure that meeting that you and whatever leadership you bring to the organization can have and prepare in advance of the meeting. You want to put together an organizational pitch script. If you go online, you'll see many examples of pitches. Shorter the better. You want to practice that beforehand. You want to demonstrate on your website that you're business ready. You want to be, if you have had corporate supporters up to date, you want to make sure that they're prominently featured on your website. So, in fact, an organization, a business that is considering you for a sponsorship can readily go and see that you're ready and the store is open for business. We want to make the deal. You want to rehearse your organizational pitch. As you say, you want to find that door opener, an ambassador to set up a face-to-face meeting. I know many organizations that go cold and succeed, but you do not have to go that approach. It's a harder climb, and that's why I want you to, in fact, go down the people hour to find your internal ambassadors. Ideally, we'd love to see some business people on your boards, and local United Way's and other organizations like RSVP are in a position or SCORE to help you identify prospective board members coming from business. You want to demonstrate in your meeting your knowledge of why the company should be interested and how they dovetail with your own. You want to be able to show that you've done your homework. You want to be clear on what's in it for the business and how a partnership is a win-win for the company and your organization. You want to explain that you're not interested in what I would say dating. You're not looking for a single transaction, but you're looking for an ongoing partnership, which is what businesses dealing with other businesses do. They don't trade their partners year in, year out. And you want to indicate that you see this as the beginning of what you hope will be a rich partnership, that in fact you are going to basically demonstrate to them, because you're going to underpromise and overdeliver on what you've offered. In building the relationship, you want to make sure there are media opportunities and that their logos have signage. You want to acknowledge them in your materials. You invite them to special events. You want to enlist their employees in your volunteer opportunities. You basically want to build an internal cadre of supporters. And most importantly, you want to be able to show to them through data and analysis, document how much was accomplished, both at your end and also in terms of what the business's end. Sum up, there's different application processes depending on the aisle that you take, different expectations. What's in it for us? We get new sources of funding. We hopefully get sustainable sources that we can build on. Once we begin to develop a higher corporate profile, that increases our visibility to other companies. We're diversifying the types of resources we get. There are cons. Well, yes, if you were an environmental organization that was receiving support from Exxon before Valdez, the great oil spill in Alaska, that tarnished halo would extend to you. And it also, if you associate yourself publicly with a company that is about to have its halo tarnished in a field that you're in, say if you're involved in promoting better workplace practices globally, and you've become associated with a company that was implicated by the terrible fire by vendors in Dhaka, Bangladesh, you're going to have some explaining to do. And so, in fact, you have to be very careful as to what type of companies and the nature of the partnerships you end with them. Might your support be reduced from other sources? I've seen that happen. It's something that you do have to weigh, but I wouldn't say it's an overarching reason not to go there. So in closing, the water is great. This is a wonderful time to develop new types of partnerships and relationships with businesses. As I say, the number that are coming to nonprofits and that we're seeking out and giving them the opportunity are radically increasing every day. I don't have to go far from my daily day. I go to Brooks Brothers to see if I want to get a new winter coat, and I find that, in fact, if I give an existing coat, they will make a donation of a free coat. This is a practice that we used to see, with more fringe types of organizations, and now we see that's pioneered to more traditional online organizations. I can't begin to tell you how many examples I see of it every day in my walking around in my neighborhood in New York and what I witness in other cities. We also see that businesses don't want to reinvent a new set of partners every year. As I said, they're looking for ones that, in fact, that can be a long-term relationship. That goes back to our research, is looking at, we're not trying to find companies where we're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, but in fact trying in fact to look for ones that are most logical based on what we do, what they're interested in, the demographic of their customers that they are interested in, and come up with that creative idea. You may, in fact, going back to Taproot, even in the cities where Taproot doesn't exist, approach an advertising agency and ask them to take you on as a pro bono client to help you develop the idea of a campaign with a local business. Let them create a whole kit that you can take to a local business. Let them help you do the research. Get an advertising executive to work pro bono with you through a company you already have a relationship with to develop this. I know the most precious commodity those of us in the nonprofit sector have, and I've been in the sector since, believe it or not, since 1966, is our time. So this is the bottom line message that I want you to take is that this is not a whole new set of responsibilities that those of you on the call have to take on, but it is an opportunity for you to recruit talent to help you to pursue these aisles in the supermarket and come up with a win-win that would last for you. So you have, these are some of the standard resources, including videos that the Foundation Center makes available. We've actually have now 20 minutes to turn over to questions and discussion, and I very much welcome hearing very specific questions. I've basically condensed a one-day seminar into 40 minutes, so I'm sure many of you want to dig and hear more questions in particular. Carolyn, can I hand over to you now?
Yes, thank you, Michael. And actually, we're going to leave this view, so you're not going to be on camera anymore. I'm going to bring up a slide that has a link to a feedback survey. I'm also going to bring it up on people's browsers, just because I know we're going to be answering the questions, and I hope you'll all stay with us. But I know many of you may start leading, so we want to make sure you do the feedback form and because we have asked you a lot of, the standard questions, how did you like the webinar, but also about ideas for future topics or more on this topic in particular. All right, well, I did want to, we are getting the questions in, so I will turn to those in a second. I just wanted to point out a couple other housekeeping things if you'd missed the announcement at the beginning, because a couple of people were asking me during the webinar, how do they get the printout of the presentation slides? That is available up in the top left corner at this point. Now the webcam view is off the screen. It's handouts to download, and there's the resource list that Michael's referred to, and also the slide PDF. So those are available. And I also, in the Q&A as we went along, I posted a couple things of interest. Michael had mentioned access to the Foundation Center's databases, like our corporate giving database. And if you're not sure where you can find the Foundation Center locally, I did post the link over on the left margin with the Q&A, the grantspace.org Find Us. And also, we do have an FAQ on gift acceptance policies that does exactly what Michael said and does a Google search of finding a lot of examples, so and done some of that legwork for you. All right, sorry about that. Now the questions. Bob is asking, let's see. Oh, common question. How do you overcome the fact that, okay, you're looking at a corporate prospect, you haven't approached them before, but they may already have their causes in place. They say, these are the causes we want to support, and now they're trying to either, add on to the causes they support, or are they going to dilute someone else's gifts? I mean, how do you address those issues?
This is one of the fun things. The most fun thing in this whole process is to be creative and to brainstorm ideas among your staff, your board. You might convene a meeting of folks that you think are savvy about these issues. A brainstorming meeting. I did that when I worked for Amnesty International, and we approached a company called Reebok and to underwrite our tours with Bono in the early 80s, and Reebok was not interested at all, in our cause of human rights at the time. But back to a point I made earlier, they were interested in who comes to rock concerts because those were the customers that buy Reebok sneakers. And we were able, through documenting that the constituency that we could reach out to through rock concerts, it was not, and by the way, Amnesty at that point did not have young people as a large percentage of their supporters. They were primarily old. So one route is to be creative, come up with an idea that might be out of the box, attract some creatives to help you explore that. Two, again, what I said earlier, think of the demographic of the company who they're selling to, and think of does your organization have an appeal to that demographic in any way. A good example, by the way, of an organization that's very successful in this with a variety of companies in different spaces is Do Something! Exclamation point, which is generating more than 80% of its budget now through corporate sponsorships.
Okay, and I have a question that had come in. I apologize in advance for mispronouncing your name. Elfinesh is asking, what spin would you put on this or how would the advice be different if you're trying to break into corporate donations as a brand new nonprofit organization?
This is what, I have to tell you, this is what I find fascinating, is some companies have gone into space and they're supporting organizations that you could never possibly imagine exist. And you know why it is? Because somebody knocked on their door, literally. Because they've gotten the message, and the Edelman survey, which is one of the resources, that we are more likely to support, we as consumers, are more likely to support companies that demonstrate through the products on their aisles that they have a social conscience. As I said, Paul Newman was a pioneer in this area. So if you have businesses that have not yet, that are in retail, that have not developed products or have not provided space, and you feel that your cause pulls at the heartstrings of people in the community among their customer base, or make a sense, go for it. Go to a bank and ask them if they would do a display of photographs of having to do with the children that your organization may serve, for example. Approach the local utility company and ask if they would do an insert in their bill promoting your work. Become much more aware of the organizations that are doing similar things. But we used to say that the only organizations active in this space were the American Red Cross and the Susan B. Conan Rescue for the Cure, which have very sophisticated vice president marketing departments. But now what we see is there are more organizations coming online, or online literally, or coming on store with campaigns. If you have access to a designer that is willing to make a T-shirt, and that is a designer, for example, that company would appreciate. Could be a local unknown designer. You might approach them and ask them if they would sell it, and make clear that one of the negotiating points is here, because it is a negotiation, because the company is gaining from something, that they specify what % of the proceeds of the sale of the product will go to support the organization. This is a common mistake I didn't mention, is we're now in the second generation of organizations in the consumer philanthropy space, and it's no longer good enough to say a portion of the proceeds, because we as consumers are smarter, and 0.01% is not much, and we're more likely to see 5% or 10%. Or in the case of Kenneth Cole and his stores, we often see products where 100% are going on board. So you can try businesses that have not yet entered the space, and use some creativity in thinking through the consumer philanthropy aisle, if there's a match for what you might have, or in the facilities aisle in terms of displaying works. And department stores are a good prospect for that, particularly during the holiday season.
Thanks, Michael. And another Michael participant has a question. This is an interesting approach that's aligning, corporate interests with his organization's values and programs, and he's wondering how this may fit into your aisles. His organization is seeking business partners to provide jobs for individuals in, I assume it's some kind of employment program or something similar. So he's wondering how that strategy fits in with your marketplace.
Oh, I love that idea. Many subsectors, and we didn't touch about this, when I went back to the prospect research, I said pick 3 subsectors before you identify individual companies, and the NAICS code is the best code around in looking at the different subsectors that constitute businesses. All right, so going back to department stores, and retail is very sensitive to the economy, and is retail is very eager to get us all back to shopping, because of course many of us are still feeling the effects of the recession. Department stores are generally not good aisle 1 donors. However, what is an interesting thing for unemployed, from a perspective of training people for jobs, is to look at the major employers, and what immediately comes to my mind is retail stores like to have opportunities to bring new customers in. And one way to approach a major retail store in your area is saying, create a day which we can promote for, as the name of your organization, Shopping Day at the Store, where a portion, and again publicly, would go to the organization that in fact benefits, that is the stated beneficiary, and that the organization, it's actually the marketing aisle. It's because what the retail business will do is, in their advertising, will infuse indication that that on that day you can go, and a portion of the proceeds from the sale of certain products or throughout the store, I see that with Macy's, will go to the organization you've identified. So I would go through the marketing aisle, which what we did not mention is if we don't have exact figures of how much money corporations are now spending in the marketing aisle in sponsorships of nonprofits, but what I can tell you with some assurance is it exceeds a great deal aisle one. And it's so actually the marketing aisle would be one I would approach, and I would go through either the marketing advertising people at the store, or if you have a contact, to ask them to introduce you to them.
And Steve has a very good question. How do you use your board of directors in securing corporate gifts?
One of the things that we need to do in governance is when we bring on a board member, or even when before we determine if we're presenting them to the board for service, is have them fill out a questionnaire which includes, their business affiliations and who they know, because inevitably our board members have relationships, what I call relationship capital, that we need to cash in on. At the same time, if there are corporations and businesses in the community that we see as good prospects for us, we need to look through the people power aisle and talk to their HR people to say we're ready to recruit corporate executives from those companies onto our board. Back to the presenting question is, if we find out that our board members have connections to businesses that are on our prospect list, we want them to help to make an introduction. I have to tell you, during hard economic times, and many segments of our economy are still not back on their foot again, although we certainly know financial services is, we are considered a morale booster. We are considered an opportunity that when we get corporate volunteers, whether it be on the board or working with us as tutors or in whatever capacity that our programs provide, we show more appreciation. And smart HR people are looking to have civic leadership opportunities to increase the morale of their employees. That's why you see so many corporate teams in walkathons and marathons, for example, is because we know that we will appreciate them, and it's a way that at the same time that they can develop civic leadership skills that will help them in their advancement in their companies.
And an interesting question from Crystal Marie. She is seeing more companies use the phrase they're looking to creating shared value versus corporate social responsibility. And she's wondering if that's becoming a more common theme or common language that you hear.
Thank you so much for the question. And the point I need to make is that with 26 million businesses, they are not embracing all the same language. So the language we might run into in Silicon Valley is going to be very different from the language we're going to run into at banks. And you use just one term that you've encountered. I see ROI, return on investment. I see some corporations using the term corporate social responsibility. Others are using the term sustainability. That we have a concept introduced from Great Britain called the triple bottom line, that companies are realizing that they have to produce value for their employees, for their shareholders, and their stockholders. So there's a lot of intellectual and vocabulary ferment going on, and the best thing to do is to look at the language the company uses. But I read my local business newspaper. I endeavor to scan online different blogs having to do with corporate citizenship, corporate social responsibility. What we're also seeing, and we haven't had a chance to talk about, is we see more S corporations, which are social in about 6 to 8 states, I think now, including New York and Colorado, where businesses can incorporate as a new category of company where they're actually producing a better bottom line for their customers and the company, but also for the communities, and they're getting special status as corporations. And Tom's website that you saw there is an example of it. So I would pay attention to the new generation of green businesses that are emerging, particularly if you have any relationship to nutrition and lifestyle, as well as the environment. Look at the new entrepreneurs that are popping up and see, and they're looking for ways to how they can embed in their business model doing good and doing it quite creatively.
Actually, as you said that, I realized I went to look for, we have a good knowledge base article on our website on social enterprise that talks about the B corporations and L3Cs and the other new models you're talking about. So I'm going to post that link over in the Q&A. While I'm doing that, I'll give you another question.
Cynthia, before we go there, just one idea. You know, my generation, I'm hard at work. I'll probably never retire. I'm 66. But there are a lot of people of my age who have retired. And I realize that this sounds like a big job description for folks to do. Go to SCORE, go to RSVP, find some volunteers that would love to read the business press on a weekly basis for you, read the daily newspaper, and report to your staff on corporate business opportunities that they're coming across. Because we're seeing part of the intelligence gathering that we can do, we don't personally have to do, and this is a wonderful task for a retired volunteer to tackle on behalf of the organization. Sorry, next question.
Yeah, the question was from Bob. He's wondering, when he was intrigued by your suggestion to go to schools and tap into marketing programs to find student volunteers. So he was just wondering, is marketing, or is there a difference? Should he look for people who are studying nonprofit marketing?
It's an excellent question. Where I would start is we have a movement of social entrepreneur clubs at local business schools. We have several in New York, and these are MBA students that have a social conscience and are interested, as growing numbers are, students of being what we call social entrepreneurs. I would go through the president of the local social entrepreneur club at your university campus. I would also look online and see if they have a social entrepreneur curriculum and approach those professors. Or if you, I created a successful partnership with the Columbia University Business School, where I went directly to the president of their social entrepreneur club, and she identified a professor that taught a class who was looking for actual cases where organizations could partner with nonprofits. And I got a team of 6 students that worked with us on an earned income enterprise that included marketing. It could be a professor of marketing, it could be a professor of social entrepreneurship, but as you've heard, I'm a professor here at the Baruch College School of Public Affairs, and I'm constantly looking for real-time projects where my students can market would partner with nonprofits and produce something that they need to do, like a capstone report, but also provide something of value to the nonprofits at no cost to the nonprofits.
I have a question for Mary Jo, asking some specific in terms of who to contact at a company. And her specific situation is a museum looking, they have a corporate membership program that offers benefits to the company, to its employees, marketing opportunities. But I think we can generalize a question on, really, how do you know who to start with in terms of trying to make a contact at a corporation?
Well, that's why I said that I don't want you doing this work. Because the larger the company, the more complex their structures are. One of the companies I mentioned to you today, where I worked on a partnership with, I had the vice president of their foundation on my board. And it wasn't until years later, I found I was knocking my head against the wall when I kept on saying, well, can't you introduce us to the marketing department? And then I discovered, unbeknownst to me, that the marketing department and the foundation department were competitors. and they were not cooperative. And I had this idealistic notion that all parts of the company work well together, and and one navigator would, one knocking on one door would lead me to another. And somebody on the inside of the company is going to know better than what I can gather from the outside, unless I possibly one approach I could have taken, which I didn't take, was talk to other organizations that had been successful in developing partnerships with the company and getting their advice. I don't believe we compete. I believe we're in this cooperatively, and I've learned fundamentally from my own experience, when we share with others, we can gain a lot. And as you can attest, Caroline, you can do search through the Foundation of Corporate Giving online through the name of the beneficiaries to find other organizations that can perhaps serve as that additional source of intelligence.
Right. We do have a lot of information through the database on the who's who in the company. And do you have time for one more question? I know we're at the top
Yes.
of the hour, but we have one more question. Well, actually, and a comment regarding language. Enzi just wanted to bring up that she's been hearing corporate social performance more often instead of responsibility as a more active statement. Hilda has a question that we'd all love to know the magic answer. Any tips on how to get larger grants or donations from companies?
There is a wonderful case study by James Austin, A-U-S-T-I-N, of the Harvard Business Review. And what I will try to do, Caroline, can I get that to you and add it on your resource list? Is that possible?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
It's one of the most successful organizations in this space has been City Year, based in Boston, who's partnered with a number of corporations, including Bain and Company. And the best case study I've seen that addresses this issue of how to build long-term partnerships with a number of companies is in the case study. So I will make it available to you. In the closing comment, thank you so much for sharing questions. I only wish we had the opportunity face-to-face and to do this all day long. You'll see in the evaluation sheet that many of the phases that we touched on here, we could literally do a one-day webinar, a 1 hour webinar. So please fill out the evaluation forms. And if you would like us to go deeper into this topic today or to pick up on a different topic, we at the Baruch College School of Public Affairs and the Foundation Center are prepared to do that, because your knowledge and contributing to your knowledge are of critical importance to both the Foundation Center and to us at Baruch, and we want to do everything we can in our power to empower you to be able to ensure that your organizations succeed in advancing their mission. So thank you very much for this opportunity today.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing your expertise with us, and thank you, everyone, for attending. And please, we will be posting the recording on our website if you wanted to listen again. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Bye now.